Imagine a perfect life shattered in an instant, a devoted husband, a dream home, and a long-awaited pregnancy. But what if every loving gesture was a lie? What if the man you trusted most was plotting your downfall, hiding millions, and building a secret family? Joins Sarah as she uncovers layers of betrayal that will leave you breathless. Affairs, embezzlement, shocking twists about her daughter's true origins, and a fight for justice that defies everything she believed. From heartbreak to empowerment, this story of resilience will hook you until the very end. Stick around to discover how one woman's shattered trust leads to unbreakable strength. If you love tales of survival and revenge, hit that like button. Drop a comment with your biggest plot twist prediction, share with a friend who needs inspiration, and subscribe for more gripping stories like this. Let's dive in. Sarah Matthews adjusted her growing belly as she sat in the plush waiting room of Dr. Henderson's obstetrics office. At 38, this pregnancy had been both a surprise and a blessing after years of trying. She scrolled through Pinterest on her phone, saving nursery ideas to her board titled Baby Matthews 2025. Soft pastels, elegant cribs, and inspirational quotes about motherhood filled her screen. Her phone buzzed with a text message. David's name appeared with a heart emoji beside it, a contact she had customized 3 years ago when they moved into their dream home in Westchester. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, my love. Missing you terribly." Sarah smiled, her heart warming despite the uncomfortable waiting room chair. David had been so attentive during her pregnancy. Even with his demanding schedule as a tech entrepreneur, his company, Data Vault Solutions, had been expanding rapidly, requiring frequent business trips. He was supposed to be in Chicago until Thursday, closing a major deal with a Fortune 500 client. Mrs. Matthews. The nurse called from the doorway, clipboard in hand. Sarah gathered her designer purse, a Christmas gift from David, and followed the nurse down the familiar hallway. The routine 24-week checkup should be straightforward, but Dr. Henderson had been monitoring her blood pressure closely. At her age, this pregnancy carried more risks than her younger self might have faced. "How are we feeling today, Sarah?" Dr. Henderson asked as she entered the examination room, her kind eyes crinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Good, mostly. A little tired, but David says that's normal." Sarah settled onto the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath her. "He's been reading all the pregnancy books alongside me. We're like students cramming for the most important test of our lives." Dr. Henderson chuckled while checking Sarah's chart. "How supportive. Many husbands don't engage quite so thoroughly. You're lucky to have a partner who's so invested." As the doctor began the examination, Sarah's mind wandered to their morning routine. David would bring her breakfast in bed every day before leaving for work, usually something healthy that he had researched for pregnant women. Greek yogurt with berries, whole grain toast with avocado, fresh orange juice. He had even installed a small refrigerator in their bedroom so she wouldn't have to walk downstairs if she got hungry during her prescribed bed rest periods. "Your blood pressure is still elevated," Dr. Henderson noted, frowning slightly at her readings. "Nothing dangerous, but I want you to continue taking it easy. Stress can be a major factor, so try to keep your environment as calm as possible." David has been amazing about that. He even hired Maria, our housekeeper, to help with everything, so I don't have to worry about cleaning or cooking. Sarah's voice carried genuine gratitude. "She's been with us for 3 years now, and she's like family. I don't know what we'd do without her." The ultrasound machine hummed to life, and soon Sarah was looking at the grainy black and white image of her daughter. They had decided to learn the gender early, with David insisting they needed time to prepare properly. He had already started painting the nursery a soft lavender, claiming their little girl deserved a princess palace. "Everything looks perfect with baby," Dr. Henderson assured her, printing several photos. "She's measuring right on track, and her heartbeat is strong. You're doing everything right." Sarah, walking to her car after the appointment, Sarah felt that familiar surge of gratitude for her life. The Westchester neighborhood was everything she had dreamed of when she was working as a marketing coordinator in Manhattan 15 years ago. Tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and the sense of safety that came with financial security. Their house sat on a corner lot, a colonial-style dream with white columns and black shutters. David had surprised her with it 3 years ago, right before proposing. He had blindfolded her and driven her there, revealing both the house and the engagement ring in one magical moment that still gave her chills. As she pulled into their circular driveway, Sarah noticed David's Tesla wasn't in the garage. That was odd. He always parked inside to protect the car's finish. Maybe Maria had needed to move it for some reason. She used her key to enter through the front door, calling out as she always did. "I'm home, the baby looks perfect." Silence greeted her. Maria usually responded from whichever room she was cleaning, her cheerful voice carrying through the house with updates about her progress or questions about dinner preparations. Sarah climbed the stairs slowly, her hand trailing along the polished banister David had insisted on having refinished when they moved in. The house felt different somehow, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Maybe it was just her pregnancy hormones making her more sensitive to changes in atmosphere. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from David. "Thinking about you both. How did the appointment go?" Sarah paused on the landing, something nagging at her consciousness. She opened her Find My iPhone app, something she rarely used except to locate her misplaced phone. David's location showed he was in Chicago, just as he had said, but something felt off about the timing of his texts. She was being paranoid, she told herself. Pregnancy brain was a real thing, making women overthink every small detail. David loved her. He had spent the last 8 months proving it every single day with his attentiveness and care. The master bedroom door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. Maria was meticulous about closing doors after cleaning each room. Sarah pushed it open gently, expecting to find Maria changing the sheets or dusting furniture. Instead, she found her world shattering into a million pieces. David and Maria were intertwined on the bed she shared with her husband, their bodies moving together in a rhythm of betrayal that made Sarah's knees buckle. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows she had carefully chosen seemed to spotlight their affair like some cruel theater production. Sarah's car keys slipped from her fingers, hitting the hardwood floor with a metallic clatter that seemed to echo through the house. Outside, as if the universe was responding to her heartbreak, the first drops of rain began hitting the bedroom windows. The sound of the keys made Maria lift her head from David's shoulder. Their eyes met in the mirror across from the bed. The mirror Sarah had chosen because David said he wanted to see her beautiful face from every angle when they made love. Maria's eyes widened in horror, but she didn't immediately pull away from David. For a moment that lasted an eternity, the three of them were frozen in a tableau of destruction. "Sarah," Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. David turned then, his face cycling through surprise, guilt, and something that looked almost like annoyance at being interrupted. Not shame, not remorse, annoyance. Sarah backed away from the doorway on unsteady legs, her hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her mother's distress, and Sarah almost sobbed at the innocence of that movement. She turned and fled, but not before catching Maria's reflection one more time in that damn mirror. The younger woman was sitting up now, sheet clutched to her chest, but her expression had changed. Where there should have been shame or apology, Sarah saw something else entirely. Maria looked almost triumphant. Sarah sat in her car in the driveway for 20 minutes, rain drumming against the windshield like tears she couldn't yet shed. Her hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, trying to process what she had witnessed. The image of David and Maria together kept replaying in her mind like a horrible movie she couldn't turn off. Her phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment she stared at it in disbelief. He was calling her while Maria was presumably still in their bedroom. "Hi, honey." David's voice sounded completely normal, casual even. "How did the doctor appointment go? Is our little girl doing well?" Sarah's throat closed up. How could he sound so normal? So loving. The appointment was fine, she managed to whisper. Great, I should be home Thursday evening as planned. Maybe we can start discussing names seriously. I've been thinking Emma might be perfect. It means whole or universal. What do you think, Emma? The name they had been casually considering for weeks. Now it felt tainted, like everything else in her life. I need to go, Sarah said, ending the call abruptly. She couldn't stay in the car forever. Eventually, she had to face this nightmare. Sarah walked back into her house on unsteady legs, her keys jingling in her trembling hands. The house was quiet again. Maria appeared at the top of the stairs, fully dressed now in her usual uniform of black pants and a white blouse. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and if Sarah didn't know better, she would think Maria had spent the afternoon doing laundry. Mrs. Matthews, Maria said, her voice carefully neutral. You're back early. How was your appointment? The audacity of the question hit Sarah like a physical blow. This woman who had been living in their home, eating their food, accepting their trust and generosity, was standing there acting as if nothing had happened. Where is he? Sarah asked, her voice stronger than she felt. Maria's facade cracked slightly. Her eyes darted toward the master bedroom, then back to Sarah. I don't know what you mean. Don't, Sarah's voice cut through the air. Don't you dare lie to me. I saw you. Both of you. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Maria's shoulders sagged, and for the first time since Sarah had known her, the composed young woman looked her age. At 28, Maria was 10 years younger than Sarah, with smooth skin and the kind of effortless beauty that didn't require expensive creams or procedures. Mrs. Matthews, I can explain, Maria began, but Sarah held up her hand. How long? The question came out as barely more than a whisper. Maria looked toward the floor, her hands twisting together. 8 months. 8 months. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. 8 months meant the affair had started before her pregnancy, before David's sudden increase in affection and attention, before the breakfast in bed and the careful monitoring of her health, before he had seemed to become the perfect husband. He said he was going to tell you, Maria continued, her voice gaining strength. After the baby was born, he said he wanted to wait until you were strong enough to handle it. The cruelty of those words hit Sarah like ice water. David had been planning her abandonment while pretending to care for her pregnancy. Every tender moment, every loving gesture, had been performed while he counted down the days until he could discard her. Tell me what, Sarah's voice was deadly quiet, that he loves me, that he wants to be with me. Maria lifted her chin, and there was that triumphant look again. He said this marriage was a mistake, that he married you when he was young and didn't know what he really wanted. Sarah sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, her legs finally giving out completely. The baby kicked again, harder this time, and Sarah wrapped her arms around her belly protectively. Get out, she whispered. Mrs. Matthews, please let me explain. Get out, Sarah screamed with a force that surprised them both. Get out of my house right now. Maria hesitated, looking toward the master bedroom again. Sarah realized with a sick feeling that she was looking for David's permission. Even now. He's not here to protect you, Sarah said, her voice regaining some steadiness. So I suggest you leave before I call the police. After Maria left, Sarah sat in her empty house trying to figure out what to do next. She felt like one of those women in a Lifetime movie, except this was her actual life crumbling around her. She thought about Alicia Florrick from The Good Wife, how she had stood by her husband through his scandal with such dignity. But Alicia had been betrayed by circumstances, not by the person who was supposed to love her most. She called her sister Kate first, but hung up before it could ring. What would she say? That her perfect marriage was a lie, that the man she had trusted with her future had been methodically planning her destruction. Instead, she found herself dialing Jennifer Park, her college roommate who had become a successful divorce attorney in Manhattan. They had kept in touch over the years, meeting for lunch every few months, but Sarah had never imagined she would need Jennifer's professional services. Sarah, what a nice surprise, Jennifer's voice was warm and familiar. How's the pregnancy going? David must be over the moon about becoming a father. Jen, Sarah began, and then broke down completely. 2 hours later, Jennifer sat across from Sarah in her kitchen, a legal pad in front of her, and a cup of tea growing cold beside it. Sarah had told her everything, from the discovery to the 8-month timeline to Maria's cruel revelation about David's plans. The first thing we need to understand is your financial situation, Jennifer said gently. In a case like this, particularly with a pregnancy involved, we need to move quickly to protect your interests. I don't know much about our finances, Sarah admitted, feeling foolish. David handles all of that. He says I shouldn't worry about money stuff while I'm pregnant. Jennifer made a note on her pad. That's concerning. Sarah, in high-asset marriages, financial opacity can be a red flag. We need to get copies of all your bank statements, investment accounts, business records, everything. High-asset marriage, Sarah repeated. I mean, we're comfortable, but we're not millionaires or anything. Jennifer looked up from her notes. Sarah, your house alone is worth at least $2.3 million. David's company has been valued at over $15 million according to the business journals. You're absolutely dealing with millionaire marriage asset division issues here. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had been so focused on creating a comfortable home that she had never really considered the actual value of their lifestyle. The vacations to Napa Valley, the designer furniture, David's insistence that she didn't need to work. It all suddenly made sense in a way that terrified her. What if he's been moving money? She asked, remembering Maria's designer purse and wondering how a housekeeper's salary could afford such luxury. That's exactly what we need to find out. Sarah, I need to ask you something difficult. Do you want to try to save this marriage, or do you want to protect yourself from further damage? Before Sarah could answer, her phone buzzed with another text from David. Missing you so much. Can't wait to hold you and our daughter. She showed the message to Jennifer, who shook her head grimly. He doesn't know that you know, Jennifer observed. That gives us an advantage, but not for long. Sarah, I need you to think carefully about what you want to do next. Sarah stared at the message, thinking about David's voice on the phone earlier. How normal he had sounded. How loving. How completely convincing his performance had been. I want to fight, she said finally. But first, I want to know exactly what I'm fighting for. That evening, Sarah lay in her bed alone for the first time in 3 years. The sheets still smelled like David's cologne, a scent that now made her nauseous. She had stripped the bed and put on fresh linens, but somehow the smell lingered. Her phone rang at 9 p.m. David's name appeared on the screen, and after a moment's hesitation, she answered. Hi, sweetheart. His voice was warm and intimate. I just got back to the hotel room, and I wanted to hear your voice before bed. How are you and our little princess doing? We're fine, Sarah managed, marveling at how easily the lie came. Tired, but fine. I've been thinking about what you said about the nursery colors. Maybe we should go with that soft pink you showed me instead of the lavender. I want everything to be perfect for her. Perfect. The word hung in the air between them like a mockery. Their perfect house, their perfect life, her perfect husband. All of it had been an elaborate lie. David, she said carefully, do you ever think about what would happen if things changed between us? There was a pause on the other end of the line. What do you mean? Honey, nothing's going to change. We're going to be a family. But hypothetically, if something happened, if we couldn't be together anymore. Sarah, you're scaring me. Is something wrong? Is it the baby? The concern in his voice sounded so genuine that for a moment, Sarah almost believed she had imagined the entire afternoon. Maybe she had been mistaken. Maybe it hadn't been David at all. Just someone who looked like him. But then she remembered Maria's triumphant expression in the mirror, and she knew her eyes hadn't deceived her. No, nothing's wrong. Just pregnancy thoughts. I guess, worrying about everything. Well, don't worry about sweetheart. We're solid. We're forever. After she hung up, Sarah sat in the darkness of her bedroom and cried for the first time since discovering the affair, not just for David's betrayal, but for her own naivety. How had she not seen the signs? How had she been so completely fooled? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I saw what happened today. We need to talk." Sarah stared at the message, her heart racing. Someone else knew about the affair. Someone had been watching. Another message came through. "Check your email. You need to see this." With trembling fingers, Sarah opened her email app. A new message from an anonymous account contained a single attachment, a photo of David and Maria kissing in the kitchen 2 weeks ago, while Sarah had been upstairs resting as ordered by her doctor. The timestamp showed it was taken at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. She remembered that day clearly because David had brought her lunch in bed, claiming he had come home early from work to check on her. He had been so sweet, so attentive. He had been with Maria the entire time. As she stared at the photo, Sarah realized that everything she had believed about her marriage, her husband, and her future had been carefully constructed lies. But now she knew the truth, and the truth was going to set her free. The anonymous photographer turned out to be Marcus Chen, David's business partner and the co-founder of Data Vault Solutions. Sarah met him at a small coffee shop in White Plains the next morning, her hands shaking as she stirred sugar into her decaf latte. Marcus was younger than David, maybe 35, with the kind of intense energy that came from working 18-hour days in the tech world. He slid a manila envelope across the table between them, his expression grim. "I've been suspicious for months," he said without preamble. "David's been acting strange, missing important meetings, making decisions without consulting me. When I started paying attention, I noticed the pattern." Sarah opened the envelope with reluctant fingers. Inside were dozens of photos spanning several months. David and Maria at expensive restaurants. David and Maria shopping together at high-end boutiques. David and Maria entering a luxury hotel in Manhattan. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "Sarah, I think David has been planning to leave you for a long time. He's been moving company assets around, setting up accounts I don't have access to. I think he's planning to push me out of the business too." "Keenum, why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked, though she was grateful for his honesty. "Because David isn't the man I thought he was when we started this company. And because you deserve to know what you're really dealing with." Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Sarah, there's something else. Maria isn't just his mistress. She's pregnant too." The coffee shop seemed to tilt around Sarah. "What?" "I saw them at Dr. Peterson's office last week, the same building where my wife goes for her prenatal appointments. Maria was clearly showing, and further along than you are." Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her own belly. "How far along?" "I'd guess around 30 weeks, maybe more." "Sarah, if the timing is right, David got her pregnant while you were trying to conceive." The cruelty of it took Sarah's breath away. While she had been struggling with fertility treatments, taking hormones, tracking ovulation, and hoping desperately for a baby, David had been creating a family with another woman. "There's something else you need to know," Marcus continued. "I've been tracking some unusual financial activity. David has been moving significant amounts of money to offshore accounts. We're talking millions. Sarah, money that should be part of the marital assets?" "Millions," Sarah repeated numbly. "Data Vault is worth more than David probably tells you. We landed a contract with the federal government 6 months ago that alone is worth $22 million over 3 years. David's been very secretive about the financial details, but I have enough access to know he's been systematically hiding assets." Sarah thought about her conversation with Jennifer the day before. Her friend had been right to be concerned about the financial opacity in her marriage. Why would he do this if he wanted to leave? Why not just ask for a divorce? Marcus shook his head. "Because this way, he gets to keep everything. If you don't know what exists, you can't fight for half of it. Sarah, I think David has been planning this betrayal for over a year, maybe longer." That afternoon, Sarah sat in Jennifer's law office in Manhattan. The photos spread across the conference table like evidence in a crime scene, which, she supposed, they were. "This is actually helpful," Jennifer said, studying the images with professional detachment. "We can establish a clear timeline of the affair, and more importantly, we can use these to support claims of financial misconduct. Marcus thinks David has hidden millions of dollars," Sarah said, still struggling to process the scope of her husband's deception. "Then we need to move fast. I'm going to file emergency motions to freeze all assets and require full financial disclosure. Sarah, I need to prepare you. This is going to get ugly. David has been planning this for a long time, which means he's probably prepared for a fight." That evening, Sarah returned to her empty house with a new phone from Jennifer's office. Her old phone was now evidence, being analyzed by a private investigator to track David's communications. The new phone felt foreign in her hands, a tangible reminder that her old life was officially over. She had spent the afternoon giving Jennifer access to every financial account she knew about, which turned out to be embarrassingly few. David had always handled their money, claiming he wanted to protect her from stress. Now she understood he had been protecting his secrets. The house felt different now that she knew the truth. Every corner held memories that had been poisoned by David's lies. The kitchen where he had kissed Maria while Sarah rested upstairs. The living room where he had probably made promises to his mistress about their future together. Even the nursery, half painted in the soft lavender he had chosen, now seemed like a mockery. Sarah was heating up soup for dinner when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw Maria standing on her porch, no longer in her housekeeper uniform but wearing a flowing dress that couldn't quite hide her pregnant belly. Against her better judgment, Sarah opened the door. "Please," Maria said immediately. "I need to talk to you. There are things you don't understand." "I understand enough," Sarah replied, but she didn't close the door. "You don't know about the baby," Maria continued. "David's baby. Our baby." There it was, the confirmation of Marcus's discovery. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. "How far along?" she asked quietly. 32 weeks. Due in February." Maria's hand moved to her belly in a gesture that mirrored Sarah's own protective instincts. "Sarah, I never meant for this to happen. It just did. For 8 months, it just happened." Sarah's voice was bitter. "In my house, in my bed, while I was carrying his child too. He said the marriage was over," Maria said desperately. "He said you two had been having problems for years, that you were staying together out of habit. He said you didn't really love each other anymore. And you believed him." "I wanted to believe him," Maria's voice broke. "Sarah, I know this is terrible, but I love him. And he loves me. The way he talks about our baby, about our future together." "Stop," Sarah held up her hand. "Just stop talking." But Maria pressed on. "He's going to leave you after your baby is born. He's already planning it. He said he wants to wait until you're recovered, until you're strong enough to handle the transition." "Transition," Sarah repeated the word with disgust. "Is that what he's calling the destruction of my life? A transition? He's not trying to hurt you. Sarah, he fell in love with someone else. It happens." Sarah stared at this young woman who had been living in her house, accepting her kindness, and systematically destroying her marriage. Maria seemed to genuinely believe that love justified everything she had done. "Get off my property," Sarah said quietly. "Sarah, please." "Get off my property," Sarah screamed, and Maria stepped back in alarm. After Maria left, Sarah called Jennifer. She confirmed everything, Sarah reported. The pregnancy, the timeline, David's plans. "Jen, she actually seemed to think I should be understanding about this. Some people can justify anything to themselves," Jennifer replied grimly. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. My investigator found some concerning information about your husband's business practices. There may be criminal implications to the financial irregularities Marcus discovered. Criminal, embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, potentially all of the above. Sarah, David may not just be a cheating husband. He may be a criminal. That night, Sarah lay in bed reading Eat, Pray, Love on her tablet, trying to find some inspiration in Elizabeth Gilbert's journey of self-discovery after her own devastating divorce. The idea of traveling alone, of finding herself in foreign places, seemed impossibly romantic from her current position of pregnant and betrayed. She was interrupted by a sharp pain in her abdomen, followed by a warm wetness between her legs. Panic shot through her as she realized she was bleeding. At the hospital, Dr. Henderson's face was calm but serious as she examined Sarah in the emergency room. "The bleeding has stopped, and the baby's heartbeat is strong," she assured Sarah, "but your blood pressure is dangerously high." "Sarah, I need to ask, have you been under unusual stress lately?" Sarah almost laughed at the understatement. "You could say that. I'm going to keep you overnight for observation, and I want you to seriously consider what changes you need to make to reduce stress in your life, for both your sake and the baby's." Alone in the hospital room at midnight, Sarah overheard David's voice in the hallway outside her door. He was talking quietly to someone on his phone, and Sarah strained to listen. "No, I can't leave Chicago early," he was saying. "If I suddenly show up, she'll know something's wrong. We have to stick to the plan. I know it's hard, Maria, but it's only a few more months. After the baby comes, we can be together openly. Yes, I love you too. Our real family is worth waiting for." Sarah pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. David was here, in the hospital, while she was fighting to save their baby's life. And he was using the opportunity to reassure his pregnant mistress about their future together. She heard his footsteps approaching her room and quickly closed her eyes, pretending to sleep. The door opened quietly, and she felt David's presence beside her bed. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice full of convincing emotion. "I got here as fast as I could. You and Emma are the most important things in the world to me." Emma, he was still using the name they had chosen together, even after promising Maria that their baby would be his real family. Sarah kept her eyes closed and her breathing steady, but inside, her heart was breaking all over again, not just for his betrayal, but for the elaborate performance he was putting on even when he thought she couldn't hear him. When she was sure he was asleep in the chair beside her bed, Sarah opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. Outside her window, rain was falling again, and she wondered if the weather would always remind her of the day her world fell apart. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Emergency motion granted. All assets frozen as of midnight. The war begins now." Sarah looked at her sleeping husband, this man who had spent months planning her abandonment while pretending to love her. Tomorrow, he would wake up to find his carefully constructed plans in ruins. For the first time since discovering the affair, Sarah smiled. Sarah was discharged from the hospital the next morning, with strict orders for bed rest and stress reduction. David played the role of concerned husband perfectly, fussing over her comfort in the car and promising to take time off work to care for her. "I've asked Maria to come back," he said as they pulled into their driveway. "I know you were upset with her about something yesterday, but we need help right now. Your health and the baby's health are what matter most." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. The audacity was breathtaking. He was bringing his pregnant mistress back into their home while Sarah was recovering from a stress-induced bleeding episode caused by discovering their affair. "I don't want her here," Sarah said quietly. "Honey, I know you two had some kind of misunderstanding, but Maria has been with us for 3 years. She's practically family, and right now, you need to focus on resting, not on housework or cooking." Practically family. The phrase made Sarah's skin crawl, especially knowing that Maria was carrying David's child. "What kind of misunderstanding do you think we had?" Sarah asked, curious to see how David would navigate this conversation. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe she made a mistake with something, or you misunderstood something she said. Maria was very upset when she called me last night. She's worried she's done something to offend you." The lies came so easily to him. Sarah watched her husband's face as he spoke, looking for any sign of the guilt or anxiety he should be feeling. Instead, she saw only practiced concern and what looked almost like irritation that she was making things difficult. Inside the house, Maria was already moving around the kitchen with familiar efficiency. She had changed back into her work clothes, but Sarah noticed she was wearing a loose-fitting top that better concealed her pregnancy. "Mrs. Matthews," Maria said with downcast eyes, "I'm so sorry you were in the hospital. How are you feeling?" The performance was impressive. If Sarah didn't know better, she would think Maria was genuinely concerned about her well-being. "I'm fine," Sarah replied shortly. David's phone rang, and he stepped into his home office to take the call. Through the partially open door, Sarah could hear his voice rising in anger. "What do you mean, frozen? That's impossible. No, I don't understand. Who authorized this? This is ridiculous. I'll call my lawyer immediately." Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction. Jennifer's emergency motions were already causing problems for David's carefully laid plans. When David emerged from his office, his face was flushed with anger, but he was trying to control his expression for Sarah's benefit. "Is everything okay?" she asked innocently. "Just some business complications. Nothing for you to worry about." But Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Over the next few days, Sarah settled into a strange routine of living with her husband and his mistress while pretending not to know their secret. It was like being trapped in a psychological thriller, watching David and Maria navigate their relationship right in front of her. They were careful, but not perfect. Sarah caught the meaningful glances, the way Maria's face lit up when David entered a room, the subtle touches they thought she couldn't see. Once, she heard David on the phone in the garage, his voice soft and intimate. "I miss you too. This is harder than I thought it would be." Sarah's sister Kate came to visit on Thursday, bringing groceries and a suspicious attitude toward David that had nothing to do with the affair. "There's something different about him," Kate observed as they sat in Sarah's bedroom while David was supposedly at a business meeting. "He seems, I don't know, agitated, distracted." Sarah had decided not to tell Kate about the affair yet. She wasn't ready for the pity, the advice, or the inevitable, "I never liked him anyway," comments that would follow. "He's been stressed about work," Sarah said instead, which was technically true. "And what's with Maria? She seems nervous around you. Did something happen?" "We had a disagreement about something minor. It'll blow over." Kate frowned. "Sarah, you know you can tell me anything, right? If something's wrong, if you need help." "I know, but everything's fine. Just pregnancy drama." That afternoon, while David was out and Maria was grocery shopping, Sarah received a call from Jennifer. "David's lawyer contacted me," Jennifer reported. "They're claiming the asset freeze was filed in error, that there's no basis for the allegations of financial misconduct." "What does that mean?" "It means David is going to fight this hard." "Sarah, my investigator found something else. David has been renting an apartment in Manhattan for the past 6 months. A very expensive apartment. I think that's where he's been taking Maria." Another piece of David's secret life revealed. Sarah wondered how many other discoveries were waiting to be uncovered. "There's more," Jennifer continued. "The apartment lease is under a corporate name, one of David's shell companies." "Sarah, the level of premeditation here is staggering. This isn't a man who fell in love and made some bad decisions. This is someone who has been systematically planning to defraud you." That evening, David returned home with flowers and takeout from Sarah's favorite Thai restaurant. "I thought we should have a nice dinner together," he said, kissing her forehead. "We haven't had much time to talk lately." Over pad thai and spring rolls, David was more attentive than he had been in months. He asked about her day, her comfort level, her thoughts about baby names. If Sarah didn't know better, she would think her husband was falling in love with her all over again. "I've been thinking about what happens after Emma's born," David said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Maybe we should take some time off. Just the three of us. Go somewhere peaceful. Maybe that bed and breakfast in Vermont you liked." Sarah studied his face, wondering what angle he was working. That sounds nice. I want to be the best father possible, David continued, and the best husband. I know I've been distracted with work lately, but after Emma comes, I want to focus on our family. The word family hung in the air between them, and Sarah wondered if he was thinking about his other family, the one with Maria and their baby due in February. David, Sarah said carefully, do you ever think about what would happen if we had problems, if something came between us? His grip on her hand tightened slightly. Nothing's going to come between us. Sarah, we're solid. We've always been solid. But hypothetically, if something did happen, how would we handle it? David's eyes flickered with something that might have been panic, quickly replaced by confusion. Why are you asking me this? Is there something you're not telling me? No, I've been reading about relationships, about how couples handle stress and major life changes. I want us to be prepared. Prepared for what? For anything. For the challenges that come with having a baby. For the ways marriage changes when you become parents. David relaxed slightly. We'll handle whatever comes our way together. That's what marriage is about. Right? Facing challenges as a team. As a team, Sarah almost laughed at the irony. They were definitely facing challenges, but they weren't on the same team. David and Maria were a team. Sarah was fighting alone. After dinner, David went to his office to make phone calls, and Sarah could hear his voice through the door, tense and argumentative. She suspected he was dealing with the legal ramifications of the asset freeze, trying to find ways around Jennifer's motions. Maria knocked on the bedroom door while Sarah was getting ready for bed. Mrs. Matthews, may I speak with you? Sarah considered refusing, but curiosity won out. Come in. Maria closed the door behind her and stood awkwardly near the dresser. In her loose work clothes, her pregnancy was barely visible, but Sarah knew what to look for now. I wanted to apologize, Maria began. For whatever I did to upset you, David is worried about the stress you're under. And if I contributed to that, the girl was fishing, trying to figure out how much Sarah knew. Sarah decided to give her a little rope to hang herself with. What do you think you did to upset me, Maria? Maria's eyes widened slightly. I don't know. Maybe I overstepped somehow, or made a mistake with the housework. What kind of mistake? I don't know, Maria repeated, but Sarah could see her mind working. Maybe I was in a room I shouldn't have been in, or touched something I shouldn't have touched. Interesting. Maria was clearly worried that Sarah had seen something, but she wasn't sure what. Maria, Sarah said quietly, how long have you been pregnant? The question hit Maria like a physical blow. Her face went white, and she grabbed the edge of the dresser for support. What? You heard me. How long have you been pregnant? I'm not. I don't know what you mean. Sarah stood up from the bed, moving closer to Maria. I can see it. The way you hold yourself, the way you avoid certain movements, the loose clothes. How far along are you? Maria's composure cracked completely. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she slumped against the dresser. Please, she whispered. Please don't tell him you know. Tell who, David? Why would I need to tell David that you're pregnant? Maria's eyes darted toward the door, panic obvious in her expression. She was trapped, and she knew it. Because, Maria said in a voice so quiet Sarah could barely hear her. Because it's his baby. There it was, the confession Sarah had been waiting for. How long? Sarah asked again. 8 months, Maria admitted. I'm due in February. Sarah sank back onto the bed, her hands automatically moving to her own belly. 2 babies, 2 mothers, 1 father who had been lying to both of them. Does he know? Sarah asked. Maria nodded miserably. He's happy about it. He says after your baby is born, we can be a real family. A real family? Sarah repeated. What does that make me and Emma? The fake family? I'm sorry, Maria sobbed. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. But you did mean to sleep with my husband. You did mean to get pregnant with his child. You did mean to live in my house and accept my kindness while you planned to take my place?" Maria had no answer for that. "Get out," Sarah said quietly. "Pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight." But David said, "I don't care what David said. This is my house too, and I'm telling you to leave." After Maria left the room, Sarah sat in the darkness thinking about the conversation. She had gotten the confirmation she needed, but more importantly, she had rattled both David and Maria. They would be off balance now, unsure what she knew or what she might do next. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Motion hearing scheduled for Monday. Are you ready for this?" Sarah looked toward David's office, where she could still hear him on the phone, his voice increasingly agitated as his carefully constructed world began to crumble around him. "I'm ready," she texted back. But as she lay down to sleep, Sarah felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. The stress was taking its toll on her body, and she knew she was walking a dangerous line between protecting her future and protecting her baby. Tomorrow, she would have to decide how far she was willing to go to fight for what was hers. At 3 in the morning, Sarah woke to intense cramping and more bleeding. This time, there was no question about the severity. David found her doubled over in the bathroom, her nightgown stained with blood. "Oh God, Sarah." His panic seemed genuine as he helped her to the car. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay." During the frantic drive to the hospital, Sarah wondered if David's concern was real or if he was worried about how a miscarriage might complicate his timeline for leaving her. The thought was so dark and cynical that it scared her almost as much as the physical pain. Dr. Henderson met them in the emergency room, her face grave as she examined Sarah. "We need to do an emergency C-section," she announced. "The baby is in distress, and Sarah's blood pressure is dangerously high. We can't wait any longer." "But it's too early," Sarah gasped between contractions. "She's only 26 weeks. "She has a good chance at 26 weeks," Dr. Henderson assured her. "But we need to get her out now." The next few hours passed in a blur of medical procedures and mounting terror. Sarah was conscious during the surgery, David holding her hand and whispering reassurances that she wasn't sure she believed anymore. When Emma was born, she was tiny and blue, barely 3 pounds of fragile humanity. Sarah only got a glimpse of her daughter before the medical team whisked her away to the NICU. "She's breathing on her own," one of the nurses called out. "That's a very good sign for 26 weeks." Sarah burst into tears of relief and terror. Her baby was alive, but so small, so vulnerable. The next few weeks would determine whether Emma would thrive or face a lifetime of medical complications. David stayed by Sarah's side during her recovery, and for brief moments, she almost forgot about the affair. When she was frightened about Emma's condition, when the doctors delivered updates about her daughter's progress, David seemed like the devoted husband she had thought she married. But on the second day, while Sarah was sleeping off pain medication, she overheard a conversation that shattered any remaining illusions about David's priorities. He was in the hallway outside her room, talking on his phone in what he thought was a quiet voice. "I know this complicates things, Maria, but I couldn't control the timing. Yes, the baby is in the NICU. She's very small. I don't know how long we'll be here. Of course I'm worried about you too. How are you feeling? No, don't come to the hospital. Someone might see you." Sarah's blood ran cold as she listened to her husband prioritize his mistress's feelings while their daughter fought for life 20 feet away. "I love you too," David continued. "This doesn't change anything between us. As soon as Sarah is recovered, as soon as we know Emma is going to be okay, we can move forward with our plans. Yes, our baby is still the priority. This was just unexpected timing. Our baby, their baby was the priority, not Emma, not the tiny fighter in the NICU who needed every advantage she could get." When David returned to the room, Sarah pretended to be asleep, but inside she was burning with a fury that threatened to consume her. "Hey, sweetheart," David said softly, stroking her hair. How are you feeling? Sarah opened her eyes and looked at this man who could comfort his wife while planning her abandonment, who could call their premature daughter an inconvenience while declaring his love for another woman. I want to see Emma, she said. The NICU was a maze of beeping machines and tiny, fragile patients. Emma lay in an isolette, tubes and wires monitoring every aspect of her small body. She was so little that Sarah's wedding ring could have slipped over her wrist like a bracelet. She's doing very well for her gestational age, the NICU nurse explained. Her lungs are developing nicely, and her heart is strong. Preemies are fighters. Mrs. Matthews, don't let her size fool you. Sarah reached through the isolette's openings to touch Emma's tiny hand, and her daughter's fingers curled around hers with surprising strength. Hello, my beautiful girl, Sarah whispered. Mommy's here. Mommy's going to protect you. As she watched her daughter sleep, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The helpless, betrayed wife was being replaced by something fiercer. She was Emma's mother, and that meant she had responsibilities that went beyond her own broken heart. David appeared beside her, also reaching in to touch Emma's other hand. She's perfect, he said, and his voice carried genuine emotion. So small, but perfect. For a moment, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe seeing Emma would change everything. Maybe David would realize what he was throwing away for his affair with Maria. But then David's phone buzzed with a text message, and Sarah saw him glance at it quickly. His expression softened in a way that had nothing to do with their daughter. I need to make a quick call, he said. Work stuff. I'll be right back. Through the NICU window, Sarah watched David pacing in the hallway, his phone pressed to his ear. His face was animated, happy in a way that she hadn't seen directed toward her in months. He was talking to Maria, while their daughter fought for every breath. David was reassuring his pregnant mistress about their future together. That's when Sarah knew that Emma would never be David's priority. In his mind, Emma was a complication, an obligation left over from his old life. Maria's baby would be the one he treasured, the one he planned for, the one he would put first. Sarah's phone rang, interrupting her dark thoughts. Jennifer's name appeared on the screen. How are you, honey? How's the baby? We're surviving, Sarah said quietly. Jen, I need to ask you something. If David leaves me, what happens to Emma? What are his rights? Sarah, even if you divorce, David is still Emma's father. He would have custody rights, visitation rights. Why are you asking? Sarah looked through the window at David, still on his phone with Maria, his back turned to the NICU where his daughter was fighting for life. Because I don't think he's going to be a good father to her. I think she's going to be secondary to his new family. Sarah, that's a serious concern. But legally, unless you can prove neglect or abuse, courts generally favor shared custody. What if I could prove he was planning to abandon her, that he was systematically hiding assets that should support her? That would be different. Sarah, what aren't you telling me? Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Jen, I need you to come to the hospital. There are things you need to know. When Jennifer arrived 2 hours later, Sarah told her everything. About overheard phone conversations, about Maria's pregnancy, about David's promises to build a real family with his mistress. This is actually very helpful, Jennifer said, taking notes in her legal pad. If we can establish that David was planning to abandon Emma financially and emotionally, it strengthens our case for primary custody and increased child support. What about Maria's baby? Won't David have to support that child too? Yes, but that's actually advantageous for us. 2 children, 2 mothers, 1 father. The court will want to ensure all the children are adequately provided for. David's income will be stretched between multiple obligations. That evening, Sarah sat beside Emma's isolette, watching her daughter's tiny chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. The NICU was quieter at night, with dimmed lights and hushed voices that created an almost sacred atmosphere. Your daddy doesn't know how special you are yet, Sarah whispered to Emma. But I do. and I'm going to make sure you get everything you deserve. Schitzwaned. David had gone home to shower and change clothes, claiming he needed to check on some business matters. Sarah suspected he was really going to comfort Maria, who was probably feeling neglected while Sarah was getting all of David's attention. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I have information about your husband's business practices. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. Coffee shop on Madison Avenue near the hospital. Sarah stared at the message, wondering who else had discovered David's secrets. Another message came through. Come alone. What I have to tell you could change everything. Sarah looked at Emma, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos surrounding her young life. Her daughter deserved a mother who would fight for her, who would ensure she had every advantage and opportunity. Mommy's going to find out all of Daddy's secrets, Sarah whispered, and then we're going to build a life that's worthy of you. As if responding to her mother's voice, Emma's tiny fingers moved slightly, and Sarah chose to interpret it as agreement. The war for Emma's future was about to begin. The mysterious messenger turned out to be David's former business partner, a woman named Rebecca Santos, Maria's older sister. Sarah's world tilted as she processed this connection, sitting across from Rebecca in the small coffee shop near the hospital. Maria told me what happened, Rebecca said without preamble. About the affair, about her pregnancy, about David's promises. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Rebecca was older than Maria by about 10 years, with the same dark hair but a hardness around her eyes that spoke of difficult experiences. I helped David set up some of the offshore accounts 18 months ago, Rebecca continued. I'm a financial consultant, and he said he needed to protect assets from potential business liability. I believed him then, but now I understand what he was really doing. Sarah felt her hands trembling as she gripped her coffee cup. How much money are we talking about? Over $8 million. Sarah, money that should be part of your marital assets? Money that should support Emma? The number was staggering. Sarah had known their lifestyle was comfortable, but she had never imagined David was hiding millions of dollars while planning to abandon her and their daughter. There's more, Rebecca said grimly. David has been embezzling from his own company. Marcus doesn't know the full extent, but David has been creating fake contracts, billing for services never rendered, and skimming profits from legitimate deals. Why are you telling me this? Maria is your sister. Rebecca's expression hardened. Because Maria is 28 years old and stupid enough to believe that a man who cheats on his pregnant wife will somehow be faithful to her. But more importantly, because David is planning to throw Maria away too. What do you mean? I saw the real financial records. Sarah, David hasn't just been hiding money from you. He's been hiding it from Maria too. She thinks he's going to divorce you and marry her, but that's not his plan at all. Sarah leaned forward, her heart racing. What is his plan? To disappear, to take the money and start over somewhere else, probably overseas. Maria thinks she's going to be his wife, but she's really just his temporary distraction until he can execute his exit strategy. The coffee shop seemed to spin around Sarah as she processed this information. David wasn't just cheating on her. He was planning to abandon both his pregnant wife and his pregnant mistress. How do you know all this? Because he offered me a job helping him relocate his assets to the Cayman Islands. He said it was for tax purposes, but the timing is suspicious. Sarah, I think David is planning to disappear sometime after both babies are born. That afternoon, Sarah sat in the NICU, watching Emma sleep while her mind raced through the implications of Rebecca's revelations. Her husband wasn't just an adulterer, he was an embezzler planning to abandon 2 pregnant women and 2 children. Her phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen, and she answered with a calmness that surprised her. Hi, honey. How's Emma doing today? The same. Small but stable. Sarah watched her daughter's tiny chest rise and fall. David, I've been thinking about our finances. After Emma comes home, we'll have medical bills, childcare costs. Should I be worried about money? There was a slight pause before David answered. Of course not, sweetheart. We're in great shape financially. Data Vault is doing better than ever. That's good to hear. Maybe after Emma is stronger, we should sit down and go over everything together. I'd like to understand our financial picture better. Another pause, longer this time. Sure, if that would make you feel better. But there's no rush. You should focus on recovering and spending time with Emma. I just want to make sure Emma's college fund is properly set up, that we have adequate life insurance. That kind of thing. Everything's taken care of, Sarah, I promise. After hanging up, Sarah realized that David's reassurances felt hollow now that she knew the truth. Every "don't worry about it" had been a lie designed to keep her from discovering his theft. Jennifer arrived at the hospital that evening with a briefcase full of legal documents. Rebecca's information is a game changer, Jennifer announced. With her testimony and the financial records she provided, we can not only recover the hidden assets, but potentially have David charged with multiple felonies. What kind of felonies? Embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. The list is extensive. Sarah, your husband isn't just a cheating spouse. He's a criminal. Sarah looked at Emma through the isolette's clear walls. Her daughter was so innocent, so pure. She deserved better than a father who was a liar and a thief. What happens next? We file amended motions with the new financial information. We request emergency custody provisions, and we decide whether to involve law enforcement immediately or wait to see how David responds to the legal pressure. What do you recommend? Jennifer's expression was grim. I recommend we move fast and hit hard. Men like David don't respond to gentle pressure. They respond to overwhelming force. That night, Sarah lay in her hospital bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about the man she had married. She had believed David was successful, ambitious, and devoted to their family. Instead, he was a criminal who had been systematically stealing from his business partners while planning to abandon his responsibilities. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. There are things about David you don't understand. Sarah almost laughed at the irony. Maria thought she was protecting David from Sarah's wrath, not realizing that Sarah was probably the only person who could save Maria from David's ultimate betrayal. Against her better judgment, Sarah replied, Meet me in the hospital cafeteria tomorrow at noon. The next day, Maria appeared in the cafeteria looking exhausted and worried. Her pregnancy was obvious now in her civilian clothes, and Sarah could see the strain of the situation wearing on the younger woman. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Maria said, sliding into the booth across from Sarah. You said there were things about David I didn't understand. What things? Maria's hands twisted together on the table. He's not the villain you think he is. Sarah, he's been trapped in an unhappy marriage for years, trying to do the right thing, trying to honor his commitments even when his heart wasn't in it anymore. Is that what he told you? It's the truth. He said you two grew apart years ago, that you stayed together out of habit and fear of change. When he met me, when we fell in love, it gave him hope that he could actually be happy again. Sarah studied Maria's face, seeing the genuine belief there. The girl really thought she was saving David from a loveless marriage. Maria, do you know about the offshore accounts? What offshore accounts? The $8 million David has been hiding, money that should be supporting Emma, paying for her medical bills, securing her future. Maria's face went pale. That's impossible. David said we would have to be careful about money at first, that the divorce would be expensive. He's been lying to you, Maria, about the money, about his plans, about everything. No, Maria shook her head frantically. No, you're wrong. David loves me. He loves our baby. He's planning to marry me after the divorce is final. Sarah felt a wave of pity for this young woman who had been as deceived as she had been, just in different ways. Maria, has David ever mentioned relocating, maybe somewhere overseas? He mentioned that it might be nice to live somewhere warm, somewhere we could start fresh. Maria's voice trailed off as the implications began to sink in. Your sister Rebecca came to see me yesterday. She told me about David's real plans. Rebecca. What does Rebecca have to do with this? She's been helping David hide assets, but she's also been watching him plan to disappear with the money, leaving both of us behind. Maria stared at Sarah in shock, her hands moving protectively to her belly. That's not possible. David wouldn't do that. He loves our baby. He talks about teaching him to play baseball, about helping him with homework. Him, you know the gender. It's a boy. David is so excited about having a son. Maria's voice broke as she spoke. Sarah felt a chill run through her. David was excited about having a son with Maria, but he had shown no enthusiasm about Emma beyond the basic motions of concerned fatherhood. Maria, I need you to listen to me very carefully. David is not the man either of us thought he was. He's been stealing money from his business, lying to his partners, and planning to abandon his responsibilities to both of us. I don't believe you. Then ask him about the Cayman Islands accounts. Ask him about the fake contracts. Ask him about Rebecca's consulting work. Maria's composure cracked completely. Even if that's true, it doesn't mean he doesn't love me. Maybe he was just trying to protect our future. By stealing millions of dollars to provide for our family, Sarah leaned across the table, her voice gentle but firm. Maria, you're not his family. You're his escape plan, and when he doesn't need you anymore, he'll discard you just like he's planning to discard me. Maria stood up abruptly, tears streaming down her face. You're lying. You're trying to turn me against him because you can't accept that he chose me. I'm trying to save you from making the same mistakes I made, from trusting a man who sees people as disposable. But Maria was already walking away, her hands pressed to her belly as if protecting her unborn son from Sarah's words. Sarah sat alone in the cafeteria, wondering if she had just made a terrible mistake. Maria would undoubtedly tell David about their conversation, which would accelerate whatever timeline he was working with. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. David's lawyer is trying to have the asset freeze lifted. We need to be ready to present everything. Sarah looked toward the elevators that led to the NICU, where Emma was fighting to grow stronger every day. Her daughter deserved a father who would put her first, who would sacrifice for her well-being, who would love her unconditionally. Since David couldn't be that father, Sarah would have to be both parents. The battle for Emma's future was about to reach its climax. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning, but on Wednesday evening, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Maria appeared at her hospital room door, her face blotchy from crying and her hands shaking. I confronted him, Maria said without preamble. I asked David about the accounts, about Rebecca, about everything you told me. Sarah set down the book she had been reading, ironically. What to expect the first year, and studied Maria's expression. What did he say? He said you were lying, that you were desperate and trying to turn me against him. Maria's voice was flat, emotionless. But then I asked him about specific details, things you couldn't have made up, and his answers didn't make sense. Sarah waited, sensing that Maria had more to say. So I called Rebecca. My sister doesn't lie to me. Sarah, no matter what else is happening between us. Maria sank into the visitor chair beside Sarah's bed. She told me everything. About the stolen money, about the fake contracts, about David's plan to disappear. I'm sorry, Sarah said, and meant it. Despite everything Maria had done, Sarah could see the genuine heartbreak in the younger woman's face. He doesn't love me, Maria continued. Maybe he never did. Rebecca said he talks about me like I'm a business arrangement, like I'm just another asset to be managed. The pain in Maria's voice was raw and real. Sarah remembered her own devastation when she first learned about the affair, and she felt an unexpected surge of empathy for David's other victim. What are you going to do? Sarah asked gently. I don't know. I'm 7 months pregnant with his baby. I have no money of my own, and the father of my child is apparently a criminal. Maria laughed bitterly. I thought I was so smart that I had won some great prize by taking him away from you. Turns out we were both being played. Sarah made a decision that surprised even her. Maria, would you be willing to testify about what David told you about his plans, his promises, his attitude toward the babies? Why would you want my help? I ruined your marriage? No, David ruined our marriage. You were just the weapon he used to do it. Sarah shifted in her hospital bed, trying to find a comfortable position. But more importantly, we both have children who deserve financial security. If David disappears with millions of dollars, both Emma and your son will suffer. Maria was quiet for a long moment, her hands resting on her belly. If I testify against him, he'll hate me. He'll want nothing to do with me or the baby. Maria, based on what Rebecca told me, that was always going to happen eventually. The question is whether you want to protect your son's future or protect David's secrets. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. A week ago, Maria had been her enemy, the other woman who had destroyed her marriage. Now, Maria might be her most important ally in ensuring both their children had financial security. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "How's Emma tonight? I'll be by first thing in the morning to check on both my girls." Both his girls. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Sarah wondered if David even realized how his lies were multiplying, how his deceptions were creating a web that would eventually trap him. She replied, "Emma's stable. See you tomorrow." But she didn't mention that tomorrow would also bring the emergency hearing that could unravel David's entire scheme. The next morning, Sarah was discharged from the hospital with instructions to rest at home, while Emma continued her NICU stay. David seemed genuinely concerned about her transition back to the house, fussing over her comfort and making sure she had everything she needed. "I've arranged for a day nurse to help with your recovery," he said as he helped her up the stairs to their bedroom. "And Maria will continue handling the household tasks until you're feeling stronger." Sarah almost laughed at the irony. David was arranging for his pregnant mistress to care for his betrayed wife, while he fought to keep his stolen millions hidden from both of them. "That's very thoughtful," Sarah said instead. At 10 a.m., Sarah sat in the courtroom beside Jennifer, watching David's expensive lawyer argue that the asset freeze was premature and unfounded. David himself looked confident, even relaxed, as if he believed his legal team could make all his problems disappear. "Your Honor," David's attorney was saying, "my client has been subjected to baseless accusations motivated by marital discord. There is no evidence of financial misconduct, and freezing legitimate business assets is causing irreparable harm to Mr. Matthews' company and his employees." Jennifer stood to respond, her voice calm and professional. "Your Honor, we have extensive documentation of financial irregularities, including offshore accounts that were never disclosed to Mrs. Matthews and suspicious transfers of marital assets." Sarah watched David's face as Jennifer presented the evidence Rebecca had provided. His confident expression began to crack as the scope of his exposure became clear. "Furthermore," Jennifer continued, "we have testimony from individuals involved in establishing these hidden accounts, including Mr. Matthews' former business partner, who can speak to the systematic nature of these financial deceptions." David's lawyer requested a recess to confer with his client, and Sarah could see David's panic growing as he realized his carefully constructed lies were crumbling. During the break, Sarah received a text from Maria. "I'm outside the courthouse. Are you sure you want me to do this?" Sarah looked at David, who was having an intense whispered conversation with his attorney. His face was flushed, and she could see the anger building in his expression. "Yes," Sarah texted back, "for your son's future." When the hearing resumed, Jennifer called Maria Santos to the witness stand. David's face went white as Maria walked to the front of the courtroom, her pregnancy obvious in the simple dress she had chosen for the occasion. "Miss Santos, what is your relationship to the defendant, David Matthews?" "I have been employed as the Matthews family housekeeper for 3 years. I have also been having an intimate relationship with Mr. Matthews for approximately 8 months." The courtroom was dead silent as Maria's testimony began. Sarah watched David's attorney frantically scribbling notes, clearly unprepared for this development. "During your relationship with Mr. Matthews, did he make any statements about his marriage to the plaintiff?" "Yes. He told me that his marriage was effectively over, that he was staying with Mrs. Matthews out of obligation rather than love. He said he planned to divorce her after their baby was born." Did Mr. Matthews make any statements about his financial situation or his plans for the future? Maria's voice was steady as she answered. He said we would need to be careful about money at first because the divorce would be expensive. But he also said he had been setting aside money to ensure our future together would be secure. Did he mention any specific financial arrangements or accounts? He mentioned having money in places where it would be safe from the divorce proceedings. He said he had been planning for this transition for a long time. David's attorney objected, but the damage was done. Maria's testimony established not only the affair, but David's premeditation in hiding assets from the divorce. Miss Santos, are you currently pregnant? Yes, I'm approximately 7 months pregnant with Mr. Matthews's child. The revelation sent a murmur through the courtroom. Sarah could see the judge's expression harden as the full scope of David's deception became clear. Did Mr. Matthews discuss his feelings about this pregnancy? He was excited about the baby. He said it would be his chance to be a real father, to have the family he had always wanted. Sarah felt the sting of those words, but she also saw their strategic value. David's preference for his unborn son over Emma would not sit well with the family court judge. After Maria's testimony, the judge called another recess. David stood up abruptly and walked toward Sarah, his face twisted with rage. "You vindictive bitch!" he hissed under his breath. "You have no idea what you've done." "I know exactly what I've done," Sarah replied calmly. "I've protected my daughter's future. Our daughter will grow up knowing what kind of mother she has. Someone who destroyed her father out of spite." Jennifer stepped between them before the confrontation could escalate further. But Sarah had seen something in David's eyes that frightened her. The mask of the charming, successful businessman had slipped completely, revealing the angry, entitled man underneath. When the hearing resumed, the judge delivered his ruling. "Based on the testimony and evidence presented, I find sufficient cause to maintain the asset freeze pending full discovery of all marital assets. Furthermore, I am ordering Mr. Matthews to submit to a comprehensive financial audit and to provide detailed accounting of all business and personal financial activities for the past 2 years." David's confident facade crumbled entirely as the implications sank in. Not only were his hidden assets frozen, but now he would be forced to reveal the full extent of his embezzlement and fraud. Additionally, the judge continued, given the complexity of this case and the potential criminal implications of the financial irregularities, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation. Sarah felt a surge of vindication mixed with fear. She had won this battle, but she could see in David's expression that the war was far from over. As they left the courthouse, David grabbed Sarah's arm in the parking lot. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low and threatening. "You think you're protecting Emma, but you have no idea what kind of life you've just created for her. Let go of me, David. You could have handled this quietly. We could have worked something out, but now everyone will know. Emma will grow up with a father in prison because of your choices." Sarah pulled free from his grip, her own anger finally surfacing. "Emma will grow up with a father in prison because of your choices, because you chose to steal, to lie, to cheat, and to plan abandoning your family. I didn't create this situation, David. I just refused to be your victim." As Sarah drove home, she felt a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. She had taken the first major step toward protecting Emma's future, but she also knew that David would not go down without a fight. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Thank you for letting me help. I hope someday you can forgive me for my part in this mess." Sarah considered her response carefully before typing back, "We both made mistakes. What matters now is protecting our children." That afternoon, as Sarah sat beside Emma's isolette in the NICU, she felt a strange sense of peace despite the chaos surrounding their lives. "Your daddy made some very bad choices, sweetheart," she whispered to her sleeping daughter, "but mommy is going to make sure you're taken care of, no matter what happens next." Emma's tiny hand moved slightly, and Sarah chose to believe her daughter approved of the fight ahead. The criminal investigation moved faster than Sarah had expected. Within a week of the emergency hearing, FBI agents arrived at Data Vault Solutions with search warrants for David's office, computer files, and financial records. The local news picked up the story, and by evening, Sarah was watching her husband being led away in handcuffs on the 6 o'clock news. Tech entrepreneur arrested for embezzlement, the headline read, and Sarah felt a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. This was the father of her child, the man she had loved and trusted, being exposed as a criminal on public television. Her phone rang constantly. Reporters, old friends, distant relatives who had heard the news. Sarah let most calls go to voicemail, but she answered when Jennifer called. The FBI found evidence of over $12 million in fraudulent activities, Jennifer reported. Sarah, this is bigger than we thought. David wasn't just hiding assets from you, he was systematically looting his own company. What does this mean for the civil case? It means we're likely to recover significantly more than we originally hoped. But it also means David is looking at serious federal prison time, 10 to 15 years, potentially. Sarah thought about Emma, growing stronger each day in the NICU. Her daughter would be a teenager before her father was released from prison. I need to focus on Emma right now, Sarah said. Everything else can wait. Sorry, but everything else wouldn't wait. The media attention intensified over the next few days, with reporters camping outside the hospital and their house. Sarah found herself at the center of a story that was being framed as pregnant wife versus cheating tech mogul, and public opinion seemed overwhelmingly on her side. A producer from a major network morning show called requesting an interview. Your story is resonating with women across the country, she explained. You represent something powerful. A woman who refused to be victimized by a man's greed and deception. Sarah declined the interview, but she couldn't escape the public nature of her situation. Social media was full of comments supporting her courage, comparing her to other women who had fought back against powerful men who betrayed them. She's like a real-life Alicia Florrick, one tweet read, referencing The Good Wife. Standing up for herself and her baby against a corrupt husband. Another compared her journey to the Women in First Wives Club, celebrating her refusal to be discarded quietly. The attention was overwhelming, but Sarah found unexpected strength in the support. Women shared their own stories of financial betrayal, of husbands who had hidden assets or stolen from the family resources. She wasn't alone in this experience, even though it had felt isolating when she was living through it. Maria called one afternoon while Sarah was at the hospital with Emma. I saw the news, Maria said. Are you okay? I'm managing. How are you doing? Scared. The FBI wants to interview me about David's business practices. I don't know anything about his company, but they think he might have used me to help hide money somehow. Sarah felt a chill. What do you mean? Apparently, he put some assets in my name without telling me. Made me a signatory on accounts I never knew existed. The agents think I was either complicit or being used as a front. Maria, you need a lawyer immediately. Don't talk to the FBI without representation. I can't afford a lawyer. Sarah, I don't have any money of my own. Sarah made another decision that surprised her. I'll pay for a lawyer for you. We need to make sure you're protected. Why would you do that for me? Because David used both of us, and I don't want you to go to prison for his crimes. Your son needs his mother. That afternoon, Sarah sat with Emma in the NICU, gently stroking her daughter's tiny hand through the isolette openings. Emma was gaining weight steadily and breathing more independently each day. The doctors were optimistic about her long-term prognosis. Your daddy's story is all over the news, little one, Sarah whispered. People are calling mommy brave, but I don't feel brave. I just feel like I'm doing what I have to do to protect you. Emma's eyes opened briefly, seeming to focus on Sarah's face before drifting closed again. At 4 weeks old, she was still fragile, but her personality was beginning to emerge. She was alert during certain hours, calm during medical procedures, and seemed to respond to Sarah's voice. Dr. Henderson says you might be able to come home in another month, Sarah continued. We'll have to be very careful with you, but we'll have our own little family. Just you and me. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. There are things about David you still don't know. Meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street at 7 p.m. tonight. Sarah stared at the message, wondering what other secrets could possibly remain. David was already facing federal charges for embezzlement and fraud. What else could there be against her better judgment? Sarah agreed to the meeting. The messenger turned out to be Dr. Rebecca Torres, a woman Sarah didn't recognize, but who seemed to know her well. Mrs. Matthews, thank you for meeting me. I'm Dr. Rebecca Torres. I've been David's therapist for the past year. Sarah's blood ran cold. His therapist. Yes, he came to me initially claiming to be struggling with work stress and marital difficulties. But over time, I realized he was using our sessions to plan and justify his affair and his financial crimes. I don't understand. Aren't therapist communications privileged? They are under normal circumstances. But when a client discusses plans to commit crimes or harm others, I have an obligation to report. David crossed that line several months ago. Sarah felt the coffee shop spinning around her. What kind of plans? He talked about needing to eliminate obstacles to his new life. He mentioned that you were becoming suspicious, that you were asking too many questions about finances. He discussed ways to discredit you, to make you appear unstable or incompetent as a mother. The words hit Sarah like ice water. He was planning to take Emma away from me. He talked about seeking full custody based on your supposed mental health issues. He said pregnancy had made you paranoid and irrational, that you wouldn't be fit to raise a child alone. Sarah's hands began to shake. You're saying he was planning to frame me as an unfit mother. That's exactly what I'm saying. Sarah, David is a sociopath. He views people as objects to be manipulated for his benefit. You, Maria, even Emma, you're all just tools to him. Dr. Torres reached into her briefcase and pulled out a digital recorder. I've been recording our sessions for months. With his permission, he signed the standard consent forms. What he didn't realize is that those recordings document his criminal planning and his threats toward you. Sarah stared at the device. What's on there? Hours of David discussing his plans to steal from his company, to hide assets from you, to manipulate both you and Maria for his benefit. But most importantly, detailed discussions of his plans to have you declared an unfit mother so he could maintain control of Emma while abandoning his responsibilities to both of you. The full scope of David's manipulation was staggering. Not only had he been planning to steal millions and abandon his family, but he had been preparing to destroy Sarah's reputation and take her daughter away from her. Why are you telling me this now? Because David crossed a line in our last session before his arrest. He talked about making sure you disappeared from Emma's life permanently. The language was vague enough to maintain plausible deniability, but the intent was clear. Sarah felt nauseous. He was planning to hurt me. I can't say for certain, but I was concerned enough to contact law enforcement. These recordings are now part of the FBI investigation. That night, Sarah lay in her empty house thinking about the man she had married. She had known David was a liar and a cheat, but the idea that he had been planning to destroy her mentally and possibly physically was almost too horrifying to process. Her phone rang. Marcus Chen's name appeared on the screen. Sarah, I just heard about the recordings. Are you okay? I don't know. Marcus, I thought I understood what I was dealing with, but this is so much worse than I imagined. David fooled all of us. I've been working with the FBI to document all his fraudulent activities at the company. Sarah, there's something else you should know. I don't know if I can handle any more revelations. The company is going to survive this. In fact, without David's theft and mismanagement, we're in a much stronger position than I realized. The board wants to offer you a consulting position. Help us rebuild our reputation and develop new security protocols. I don't know anything about tech. Marcus, you don't need to. You understand people, you understand integrity, and you understand the importance of transparency. Those are exactly the skills we need right now. After Marcus hung up, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just for survival, but for the possibility of building something meaningful from the wreckage of her marriage. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria. I heard about the recordings. I'm so sorry. Sarah, I had no idea how dangerous he really was. Sarah stared at the message, thinking about the strange alliance she had formed with David's other victim. They had both been manipulated by a man who viewed them as disposable, but they had found strength in supporting each other. We're both survivors, Sarah texted back, and our children will be stronger because of what we've been through. As she prepared for bed, Sarah felt a sense of closure about the criminal case. David would go to prison for his crimes, and the recordings would ensure he could never manipulate the custody situation to take Emma away from her. But she also knew that the hardest part was still ahead. Being a single mother to a premature baby, rebuilding her financial security, and learning to trust again would be the real challenges. Emma deserved a mother who was not just a survivor, but a woman who could thrive despite everything she had endured. Tomorrow, Sarah would start building that woman. 6 months later, Sarah sat in her new home office, reviewing financial reports for Data Vault Solutions, while Emma napped in her crib nearby. The house was smaller than the Westchester mansion, a cozy colonial in a family-friendly neighborhood, but it was entirely hers. Emma had come home from the NICU at 2 months old, healthy and strong despite her premature birth. Now at 8 months, she was a happy, alert baby who seemed to inherit her mother's determination along with her father's intelligence. The consulting work with Data Vault had evolved into a full-time position as Director of Ethics and Transparency, a role that allowed Sarah to work mostly from home while helping the company rebuild its reputation after David's crimes. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now helping to clean up the mess her ex-husband had created. David had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to multiple counts of embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. The recordings from Dr. Ron Torres had been crucial in establishing the premeditated nature of his crimes and his threats toward Sarah. Maria had given birth to a son, Diego, 3 months after Emma's birth. She had avoided criminal charges thanks to the lawyer Sarah had hired for her, and the two women had developed an unlikely friendship based on their shared experience of David's manipulation. It's strange, Maria had said during one of their monthly coffee meetings. I spent so much time being jealous of your life, wanting what you had. I never realized that what I was envying was an illusion. We both fell for the same performance, Sarah had replied. The difference is that you were 28 and I was 38. I should have known better. Age doesn't protect you from master manipulators. David was very good at telling people what they wanted to hear. The financial settlement had been substantial once all of David's hidden assets were recovered. Sarah had invested most of it conservatively, setting up trust funds for both Emma and Diego. Despite everything Maria had done, Sarah couldn't punish an innocent child for his father's crimes. Sarah was reading Emma a story when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw a man in his early 40s with kind eyes and a nervous smile, holding a small bouquet of flowers. She opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Hi, I'm Michael Chen, Marcus's younger brother. I'm sorry to just show up like this, but Marcus thought, well, he thought maybe you'd like to have dinner sometime, if you're interested in dating again. Sarah looked at this man who had clearly been enlisted by his brother in some kind of matchmaking scheme. Michael was attractive in a quiet, intellectual way, and she could see the family resemblance to Marcus. That's very forward of you, Sarah said, but she was smiling. Marcus said you appreciate directness. He also said you've been working too hard to meet people naturally. Emma chose that moment to wake up from her nap, and her happy babbling could be heard from the living room. Is that Emma? Marcus talks about her all the time. He says she's incredibly smart. Would you like to meet her? Sarah asked, surprising herself with the invitation. Michael's face lit up. I'd love to. Emma was indeed an exceptionally alert baby, and she seemed to take to Michael immediately, reaching for his glasses and laughing when he made silly faces. She's beautiful. Sarah, you should be very proud. I am. She's been through so much already, but she's such a fighter. Marcus told me about what you went through with your ex-husband. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. Sarah appreciated that Michael acknowledged her past without dwelling on it or treating her like a victim to be pitied. It was difficult, but it led me to where I am now. Emma and I have a good life. Would you maybe like to have dinner this weekend, somewhere child-friendly? Obviously, I know a great place with high chairs and patient waitstaff. Sarah hesitated. Dating seemed like such a foreign concept after everything she had been through. I understand if you're not ready, Michael said gently. Marcus probably shouldn't have sent me over here, but he said you mentioned feeling isolated sometimes, and I thought maybe we could just be friends first. No pressure. Friends sounds nice, Sarah admitted. I don't have many people in my life who aren't connected to the legal proceedings or David's crimes. That weekend, Sarah found herself enjoying her first social evening in over a year. Michael was easy to talk to, funny without being overwhelming, and wonderful with Emma. He was a pediatrician, which explained his natural comfort with children. I have to ask, Sarah said over dessert while Emma played with her toy keys in her high chair. Did Marcus really just suggest you ask me out? Or is this some kind of elaborate setup? Michael laughed. It was elaborate. Marcus has been talking about introducing us for months, but he was waiting for the right time. He said you needed to focus on Emma and the legal stuff first. And now he thinks I'm ready to date. He thinks you're ready to have adult conversations with someone who isn't a lawyer, a doctor, or a federal agent. Sarah realized Marcus was probably right. Her world had become very small, focused entirely on Emma's needs and the aftermath of David's crimes. What about you? Any ex-wives or criminal conspiracies I should know about? Just one ex-girlfriend who left me for a dermatologist with better hours and a vacation home in the Hamptons. Very boring compared to your story. Over the next few months, Sarah and Michael developed a comfortable friendship that gradually evolved into something deeper. He was patient with her trust issues, understanding about her fierce protectiveness toward Emma, and never pressured her to move faster than she was comfortable with. I like that he treats Emma like she's already part of his life, Sarah told Jennifer during one of their regular lunches. Not like an obstacle to overcome or a burden to tolerate. That's because he's a grown-up, Jennifer replied. Unlike some people we could mention. Sarah had been following David's situation through the legal system. He had been transferred to a federal prison in Pennsylvania, and according to his lawyer, he was having a difficult adjustment. He had filed multiple appeals, all of which had been denied, and had requested visitation rights with Emma. Absolutely not, Sarah had told Jennifer. Emma doesn't need that kind of confusion in her life. The court agreed. Given the recordings of his threats and his demonstrated willingness to manipulate his children for personal gain, supervised visitation was denied. Sarah felt relief and sadness in equal measure. Emma would grow up without knowing her biological father, but she would also be protected from his toxic influence. One evening, as Sarah was putting Emma to bed, her daughter said her first clear word, "Mama." "That's right, sweetheart. Mama loves you so much." Emma smiled and reached for Sarah's face with her tiny hands, and Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built together. Her phone rang as she was leaving Emma's nursery. Maria's name appeared on the screen. "Sarah, I have news. I got the job." Maria had been working toward her nursing degree while raising Diego, and she had just been offered a position at the local children's hospital. "That's wonderful, Maria. You've worked so hard for this. I wanted to thank you again for everything you've done for us. The lawyer, the financial help while I was in school, the references for the job. I know I don't deserve your kindness after what I did to your marriage. Maria, we've been through this. David manipulated both of us. What matters now is that we're both building good lives for our children. Diego asks about his daddy sometimes. I don't know what to tell him. Tell him the truth, in age-appropriate ways, that his daddy made some very bad choices and has to face the consequences. That it doesn't mean Diego is bad, and it doesn't mean he's not loved. Thank you for everything." After hanging up, Sarah looked around her small but comfortable home. The walls were decorated with photos of Emma's milestones, artwork from her support group friends, and inspirational quotes that had gotten her through the darkest days. One quote, from Maya Angelou, had particular meaning. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Sarah had told her story, in court, into the FBI, and eventually in a blog she had started for other women dealing with financial betrayal in marriage. The response had been overwhelming, with hundreds of women sharing their own experiences and supporting each other through similar situations. Your story gave me courage to investigate my own husband's finances, one woman had written. I discovered he had been hiding assets for years. Thank you for showing me that I didn't have to be a victim. Another wrote, reading about your strength during pregnancy and fighting for your daughter's future inspired me to leave my abusive marriage. My children and I are safe now and rebuilding our lives. Emma would grow up knowing that her mother had fought for justice, not just for herself, but for other women and children who might face similar betrayals. That legacy felt more valuable than any amount of money David had stolen. As Sarah prepared for bed, she reflected on how much her life had changed in 2 years. She had gone from a naive, financially dependent wife to a successful businesswoman, from a victim of betrayal to an advocate for others, from isolation to a community of supportive friends and a promising relationship with a good man. Emma stirred in her crib, and Sarah went to check on her. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully, her tiny fist curled around a stuffed elephant that Michael had brought her. You're going to have such a different life than I had at your age, Sarah whispered. You're going to know that you can trust yourself, that you can survive anything, and that you never have to depend on anyone else for your security or your worth. Emma smiled in her sleep, and Sarah took it as agreement. The phoenix had risen from the ashes of her old life, and she was ready to soar. 2 years after David's sentencing, Sarah's life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Emma was now a precocious 2-year-old who had inherited her father's intelligence, but seemed to have her mother's compassionate nature. Sarah's relationship with Michael had developed into a serious commitment, and they were discussing marriage and the possibility of giving Emma a sibling. The blog Sarah had started about financial recovery after marital betrayal had grown into a full consulting business, helping women navigate the complex legal and financial challenges of divorce from deceptive spouses. She had even written a book proposal that had attracted interest from several publishers. On a crisp October morning, Sarah was working in her home office while Emma played nearby when her phone rang. The caller ID showed the name of David's federal prison. Sarah hesitated before answering. David had made several attempts to contact her over the past 2 years, all of which she had declined, but something compelled her to take this call. Sarah. David's voice was different, older, worn down by his prison experience. What do you want? David, I need to tell you something. Something about Emma. Something you have a right to know. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What about Emma? Can you come see me? This isn't something I can discuss over a recorded prison phone line. I'm not coming to see you. David, if you have something to say about our daughter, say it now. There was a long pause before David spoke again. Sarah, Emma isn't mine. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. What? I had a paternity test done while you were in the hospital. Emma isn't my biological daughter. Sarah sank into her desk chair, her mind reeling. That's impossible. I thought so too, but the test was definitive. Sarah, you were having an affair too, weren't you? I never had an affair. David, you're lying. Then how do you explain the paternity test results? Sarah's mind raced through the timeline of her pregnancy, trying to make sense of David's claim. There had never been anyone else. Emma had to be David's daughter. You're lying to try to get out of paying child support, Sarah said finally. Sarah, I'm in federal prison for 12 years. I have no money left to avoid paying. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know the truth. After hanging up, Sarah sat in stunned silence. Emma was playing with her blocks nearby, completely unaware of the bomb her father had just dropped into their lives. Sarah called Jennifer immediately. That's impossible, Jennifer said after Sarah explained the call. Sarah, you were never unfaithful. David is either lying or the test was somehow compromised. What if he's telling the truth? What if Emma isn't his daughter? Then we need to find out who her father actually is. Sarah, if David isn't Emma's biological father, it changes everything about the custody arrangement and child support. That afternoon, Sarah drove to Dr. Henderson's office with Emma, requesting copies of all her prenatal records. If there was some medical explanation for the paternity discrepancy, it would be in those files. Dr. Henderson reviewed the records carefully before speaking. Sarah, I need to ask you some difficult questions about your fertility treatments before Emma was conceived. What kind of questions? You underwent several rounds of IVF with Dr. Patterson's clinic. During one of those procedures, there may have been a mix-up with the genetic material. Sarah's world tilted. What kind of mix-up? It's extremely rare, but there have been cases where fertility clinics accidentally use the wrong sperm sample during IVF procedures. If that happened during your treatment, Emma could be genetically related to you but not to David. The possibility that Emma was conceived using another man's sperm during fertility treatment was almost too shocking to process. Sarah had trusted the clinic completely, never imagining that such a fundamental error could occur. How would we find out for certain? We would need to contact Dr. Patterson's clinic and request a full investigation of their procedures during your treatment cycle. If there was a mix-up, they are legally required to disclose it and help identify the biological father. That evening, Sarah sat with Michael and Emma, trying to explain the day's revelations. So Emma might not be David's daughter, Michael asked. It would explain why he seemed so detached from her, why he was planning to abandon her so easily. Maybe on some level, he suspected, Sarah, regardless of genetics, Emma is your daughter. Nothing changes that. But if she's not David's daughter, then she has a biological father out there who doesn't know she exists. A man who might want to be part of her life. Michael took Sarah's hand gently. We'll figure it out together. Whatever the truth is, we'll handle it. The next morning, Sarah called Dr. Patterson's fertility clinic and requested an emergency appointment. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of her life. Mrs. Matthews, I need to be completely honest with you, Dr. Patterson said, his face grave. We discovered an error in our procedures from the time period when you were undergoing treatment. What kind of error? A lab technician accidentally used the wrong sperm sample during your final IVF cycle. Instead of your husband's genetic material, Emma was conceived using a donor sample that was intended for another patient. Sarah felt the room spinning around her. You're saying Emma was conceived with sperm from a stranger. Not exactly a stranger. The donor was a medical student at the time, someone who regularly provided samples for our donor program. We have his full medical history and contact information. Does he know about Emma? No. Sperm donors typically don't expect to be contacted about specific pregnancies, but given the circumstances, we have an obligation to inform him about the error and Emma's existence. Sarah thought about Emma, playing happily at daycare, unaware that her entire genetic history was about to be rewritten. What's his name? Dr. Patterson consulted his files. Dr. James Wright. He's currently a pediatric surgeon at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. The name meant nothing to Sarah, but she realized this man, Dr. Wright, was Emma's actual biological father, a successful doctor who had no idea he had a daughter. Mrs. Matthews, Dr. Wright has the right to know about Emma, but he also has no legal obligations to her unless he chooses to establish paternity. This is an unprecedented situation for our clinic. That afternoon, Sarah found herself researching Dr. James Wright online. He was 35, unmarried, and appeared to be dedicated to his career in pediatric surgery. His hospital bio described him as compassionate and skilled, someone who had chosen to specialize in helping children. He looks like Emma, Sarah told Jennifer during an emergency phone consultation. The same eyes, the same smile. I can't believe I never noticed that she didn't look like David. Sarah, you need to think carefully about how to handle this. Dr. Wright has rights, but so do you and Emma. This could completely upend your life. Or it could give Emma a father who actually wants to be part of her life. That evening, Sarah made one of the most difficult phone calls of her life. Dr. Wright, this is Sarah Matthews. I got your number from Dr. Patterson's fertility clinic. I need to speak with you about something very important. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Are you a patient of Dr. Patterson's? I was Dr. Wright. There was an error during my IVF treatment 2.5 years ago. An error that resulted in my daughter being conceived using your genetic material instead of my husband's. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I'm sorry. What did you say? You're my daughter's biological father. The clinic used your sperm sample by mistake during my fertility treatment. Another silence. Even longer this time. Mrs. Matthews, I think I need to sit down for this conversation. Over the next hour, Sarah explained the entire situation to Dr. Wright, the fertility treatments, David's crimes, the paternity revelation, and Emma's current circumstances. So she's 2 years old, Dr. Wright asked, his voice full of wonder. Yes, her name is Emma, and she's the most amazing little girl. Smart, funny, kind, everything you'd want in a daughter. Can I meet her? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications for all their futures. Dr. Wright James, I need you to understand something. Emma has never known her father. David is in prison and has no relationship with her. If you want to be part of her life, you need to be sure. I won't let anyone else abandon her. Mrs. Matthews, Sarah, I became a pediatric surgeon because I love children. The idea that I have a daughter, that there's this little person who shares my DNA, I want to meet her more than anything. 2 weeks later, Sarah sat in a coffee shop near the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, Emma playing with toys nearby, waiting for Dr. James Wright to arrive. When he walked through the door, Sarah's breath caught. The resemblance between James and Emma was unmistakable. The same dark hair, the same intelligent eyes, the same determined set of the jaw. Emma looked up from her toys and smiled at James with the open friendliness of a 2-year-old. Hi, she said clearly. Hi there. Emma, James replied, his voice thick with emotion. I'm James. Play, Emma asked, holding up a toy car. James sat down on the floor without hesitation, and soon he and Emma were engaged in an elaborate game involving toy cars, blocks, and a lot of giggling. Sarah watched this interaction with a mixture of joy and terror. Emma had taken to James immediately, and he seemed completely natural with her. But Sarah also knew that this meeting would change everything. She's incredible, James said when Emma got distracted by a passing dog outside the window. Sarah, I want to be part of her life. I want to be her father. If you'll let me. It's not that simple. James, Emma's life is settled. She has routines, stability, people who love her. I won't let that be disrupted. I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I want to add to her life, not complicate it. Sarah studied James's face, looking for any sign of the selfishness or manipulation she had learned to recognize in David. Instead, she saw genuine love and concern for a child he had just met. There would be conditions. Emma's well-being comes first. Always. You don't get to walk away if being a father becomes inconvenient, and you don't get to override my decisions about her care or upbringing. I understand, Sarah. I don't want to replace anyone in Emma's life. I just want to be part of it. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Emma ran to James and hugged his legs. Bye-bye, James, she said cheerfully. Bye, Emma. I'll see you soon. Okay. Driving home, Sarah realized that her life was about to change again in ways she couldn't predict. Emma now had a biological father who wanted to be involved, which was wonderful but also terrifying. Her phone rang as she pulled into her driveway. Michael's name appeared on the screen. How did it go? He asked immediately. He's wonderful with her. Michael, He's everything David never was. Genuine, caring, present. Emma loved him immediately. And how do you feel about that? Sarah sat in her car for a moment, watching Emma sleep in her car seat. Scared, happy, confused. All at the same time. Want me to come over? We can talk about it. Yes, please, I need to process all of this. Over the next few months, James gradually became part of Emma's life. He visited twice a week, took her to the zoo, read her bedtime stories over video calls, and sent her pictures and videos from his work at the hospital. Emma began calling him Daddy James, which made Sarah's heart both sore and ache. The legal aspects were complicated. David's parental rights had to be formally terminated, which he contested initially, but eventually agreed to when faced with the DNA evidence. James went through the process of establishing legal paternity, but he insisted that Sarah retain primary custody. I want to be Emma's father, but you're her mother in every way that matters, James told Sarah during one of their regular coffee meetings. I don't want to disrupt the life you've built for her. Sarah appreciated James's respect for her role, but she also found herself developing unexpected feelings for this kind, intelligent man who had embraced fatherhood so completely. The situation was complicated by her relationship with Michael, who had been understanding but was clearly struggling with the changes in their family dynamic. I love Emma like she's my own daughter, Michael told Sarah one evening after James had left from a dinner visit. But I can see that she's bonding with James in a way that's different, special. That doesn't mean there's no room for you in her life. Michael, I know, but I also know that you're developing feelings for James. I can see it in how you look at him, how you talk about him. Sarah wanted to deny it, but Michael was right. Watching James with Emma, seeing his natural parenting instincts and his genuine care for their daughter, had awakened feelings she hadn't expected. I don't know what I'm feeling, Sarah admitted. This whole situation is so complicated. Maybe you need some time to figure it out, without the pressure of trying to maintain a relationship with me while exploring whatever this is with James. Michael's generosity in the face of a difficult situation only made Sarah care for him more. But she also knew he was right. She needed clarity about her feelings and what was best for Emma. 6 months after meeting James, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She accepted a job offer from a children's advocacy organization in Philadelphia, which would allow her to be closer to James while continuing her work helping women navigate financial betrayal in marriage. Are you sure about this? Jennifer asked during their final lunch together before Sarah's move. You're giving up everything you've built here. I'm not giving it up. I'm expanding it. The organization wants me to develop a national program for women dealing with financial abuse. It's a chance to help even more people. And it has nothing to do with wanting to be closer to Emma's biological father. Sarah smiled. It has everything to do with wanting Emma to have the best possible relationship with her father, and maybe wanting to see where this connection between James and me might lead. The move to Philadelphia was easier than Sarah had expected. Emma adapted quickly to her new daycare, and James was able to spend much more time with her. Their relationship evolved naturally from co-parenting to friendship to something deeper. I never expected to fall in love with someone this way, James told Sarah one evening as they watched Emma play in the park near their new apartment. Through our daughter, because of our daughter. I never expected to trust a man again after David, Sarah replied. But watching you with Emma, seeing how you put her needs first always, it made me believe that good men really do exist. A year after moving to Philadelphia, Sarah and James were married in a small ceremony with Emma as their flower girl. Maria and Diego came from New York for the wedding, and even Marcus flew in from California to celebrate. It's like a fairy tale, Maria said during the reception. After everything we went through with David, seeing you find real love and giving Emma such a wonderful father, it gives me hope for my own future. Sarah looked around at the celebration, at Emma dancing with her new stepfather, at Maria laughing with Diego, at all the friends who had supported her through the darkest period of her life. It's not a fairy tale, Sarah replied. It's better. It's real. But even in her happiness, Sarah knew that life had taught her to be cautious about perfect moments, and she was right to be wary. 3 weeks after the wedding, Sarah received a call that would change everything once again. Mrs. Wright, the voice on the phone was professional but concerned. This is Detective Morrison from the Philadelphia Police Department. We need to speak with you about your husband, Dr. James Wright. Sarah's blood ran cold. What about my husband? There's been an investigation into irregularities at the fertility clinic where he was a sperm donor. We have reason to believe that what happened with your daughter wasn't an accident. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. What do you mean Dr. Wright may have deliberately arranged for his genetic material to be used in place of your husband's during your fertility treatment? Mrs. Wright, we have evidence suggesting this was planned, not a mistake. Sarah sank into a chair, her mind reeling. That's impossible. James didn't even know me then. That's what we need to discuss. Can you come to the station this afternoon? At the police station, Detective Morrison presented Sarah with evidence that shattered her world once again. Financial records showing payments from James to a lab technician at the fertility clinic, text messages discussing the substitution of genetic material, medical records indicating that James had specifically requested information about Sarah's treatment schedule. We believe Dr. Wright became obsessed with you during your fertility treatments, Detective Morrison explained. He was a medical student doing rotations at the clinic, and he had access to patient files. He saw your photo, learned about your situation, and developed an unhealthy fixation. Sarah stared at the evidence, unable to process what she was seeing. You're saying James deliberately sabotaged my fertility treatment to father my child. That's exactly what we're saying. Mrs. Wright, your husband has been planning this relationship for over 3 years. Everything that's happened, meeting Emma, developing a relationship with you, the marriage, it was all orchestrated. The detective's words echoed in Sarah's mind as she drove home in a daze. James had manipulated her just as surely as David had, but in a completely different way. Where David had been cruel and selfish, James had been patient and loving, but both men had stolen her agency, her right to make informed choices about her own life. When she arrived home, James was in the kitchen making dinner, while Emma played with her toys nearby. He looked up with the warm smile that had made Sarah fall in love with him, and she felt sick to her stomach. How was your day, sweetheart? James asked, kissing her cheek. The police called, Sarah said quietly. James's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw something flicker in his eyes. Police? What about the fertility clinic? About how Emma was really conceived? This time, James's reaction was unmistakable. His face went pale, and his hands began to shake slightly. Sarah, I can explain. Explain what? How you deliberately sabotaged my fertility treatment so you could father my child without my knowledge. How you've been planning this relationship for 3 years. Emma looked up from her toys, sensing the tension in the room. Mama, Daddy James. Sarah's heart broke as she looked at her innocent daughter, who had no idea that her entire existence was the result of another man's obsession and manipulation. Emma, honey, why don't you go play in your room for a few minutes? Sarah said gently. After Emma left, James sank into a chair, his head in his hands. I never meant for it to happen this way, he said quietly. But it did happen this way. James, you violated me in the most fundamental way possible. You stole my genetic future, my right to choose my child's father. I fell in love with you during your treatments. I saw how desperate you were to have a baby, how much you were suffering. Your husband was cheating on you even then. I saw him at the clinic with another woman. So you decided to play God with my life. I wanted to give you the baby you wanted so desperately, and I wanted that baby to be mine. Sarah stared at this man she had thought she knew, this man she had married and trusted with her daughter's heart. You're just as manipulative as David was. The only difference is that you're better at hiding it. Sarah, please, I love you. I love Emma. Everything I've done because I love you both. Love doesn't justify what you did. James, you stole my consent, my agency, my right to choose. You created Emma through deception, just like David created his affair through deception. Emma appeared in the doorway, holding her favorite stuffed animal. "Mama's sad," she asked, approaching Sarah with concern. Sarah lifted Emma into her arms, holding her close. Her daughter was innocent in all of this, a victim of adult manipulations and obsessions. "Mama's okay, sweetheart. Mama's just thinking about some grown-up things." That evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah packed their belongings while James sat in stunned silence in the living room. She had called Jennifer, who was already working on legal separation papers and emergency custody orders. "Where will you go?" James asked as Sarah carried suitcases to her car. "Somewhere you can't find us. James, I'm taking Emma away from you, and I'm going to make sure you never see her again." "You can't do that. I'm her father. I love her. You're a sperm donor who committed fraud to create her. You have no rights to her. Sarah, please, think about Emma. She loves me. I'm the only father she's ever known." Sarah paused at the door, Emma sleeping in her arms. "That's the most heartbreaking part of all of this. James, Emma does love you, and now I have to figure out how to protect her from another man who claimed to love her, but was really just using her for his own purposes." As Sarah drove away from Philadelphia in the middle of the night, Emma sleeping peacefully in her car seat, she realized that her story wasn't about overcoming one betrayal. It was about learning to recognize and escape from a pattern of men who viewed her and her daughter as objects to be possessed rather than people to be loved. But this time, Sarah wasn't starting over from a position of weakness and naivety. She was stronger now, wiser, more capable of protecting herself and Emma. She had resources, skills, and most importantly, the knowledge that she could survive anything. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Sarah felt truly free. Free from David's cruelty, free from James's manipulation, free to build a life based on her own choices rather than other people's agendas. Emma stirred in her sleep, and Sarah reached back to touch her daughter's hand. "It's just you and me now, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. "And this time, that's exactly how it should be." As they drove through the night toward a new beginning, Sarah realized that the real lesson of her story wasn't about surviving betrayal. It was about learning to trust herself enough to choose freedom over the false security of being chosen by someone else. The phoenix had risen from the ashes not once, but twice, and this time she was ready to soar alone.